Well, good afternoon. So let me introduce our presenters today. Marja Fledderus is in her 11th year of serving as worship leader at Meadowlands Fellowship CRC in Ancaster, Ontario. She manages a bookstore as well as her family, a husband, Kevin, and 3 teenage children. Marja and Kevin also lead the middle school youth group called Momentum. And Sid Hielema serves as a team leader for our faith formation ministries of the CRC and is one of the piano players in the Meadowlands worship team. Oh, Sid, I didn't know you played the piano. Sid has also been involved in youth ministry for many years, and he's married to Evelyn. They have 3 children and one utterly adorable grandson, and I quote what Sid sent us. I'm sure he is utterly adorable. So at this time, I will turn the teaching over to both of you, and we look forward to what you have to say. So take it away.
Thanks, Diane. We're delighted to share on this topic today because it's really dear to both of our hearts. When I came on board as a piano player here at Meadowlands 6 years ago, I noticed pretty soon that 2 of my deep passions, the love of worship and the love of working with youth, were combined on the worship teams here. And I was really moved at the way Marja has developed a mentoring culture for teens at this church. And so we're really eager to share that story and hope that it blesses you in your church as well. Just a little introductory comment about the worship team here. At Meadowlands, there are about 20 musicians and singers, and every week, Marja arranges a different lineup of about 8 people who serve that week. It's a rotating lineup, and almost every week, half of the lineup is teenagers. And that kind of a way of structuring musicians really has played a role in developing a mentoring culture. Your church may have a very different way of scheduling musicians, but as you think about it, just ask yourself, how does our scheduling system facilitate growing a mentoring culture? And keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this hour. But to start with, I guess the first question is, why would we do this? Leading worship every week is demanding enough. To add to that demand, growing a youth mentoring culture is like, it feels like doubling the work and maybe more than we can handle. So let's just start right there. And Marja, you've been working on this for many, many years. Why is this so important to you?
Well, Sid, it's mainly important to me because kids are not the church of the future. They're the church of now. And they are part of our worship service, whether they're leading it or just sitting in the service. And they're already participating. So including them in participation in more visual, meaningful, purposeful ways is just totally worth it. They're already worshiping with us. They need to learn the skills of leadership to take their church into the future. So it's totally worth it. I also find that people tend to think that teenagers are a lot of work. And in fact, they are way less work than working with adults. Adults are opinionated. Adults are pretty sure they know what they want to do and what they want to see. And teenagers are open-hearted. They're super eager to learn. They're quick to learn. They expect to be told what to do, and then they do it. It's just easier than working with adults. So it really doesn't double the work. I'd say it halves the work. And yeah. Is that a good answer?
So I was talking to a friend yesterday. He's in his mid-70s. He has quite a few teenage grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And he told me this story that broke his heart. He says, I have a granddaughter who's 16. She's a very accomplished musician. But her church has said to her, you haven't really arrived yet as a musician, so we can't have you leading worship yet in our church. Maybe when you've graduated from university and entered into adulthood, we could consider it, but not yet. And this broke this man's heart. What would you say in response to something like that?
Well, if we're talking about accomplishments, if you've arrived at being a good musician or you are accomplished in leadership, who is accomplished in worship? Who of us is accomplished to gather and do anything? We have to start somewhere. Every runner starts somewhere. You have to get off the couch and put your foot on the pavement. And so the same is true of musicians in leadership. They have to start somewhere, and they're willing to start on the bottom rung. They always are. They're grateful for the opportunity. They take direction in amazing ways. They just need to be led forward and through their, I don't know, their level of achievement into a stronger, higher level of achievement. I think totally worth it.
Yep, and just to share an experience that builds on what you just said. So the way you've set up the worship team, the piano sits right next to the drum kit. And in the 6 years that I've been privileged to be part of the team, I think I've seen 5 or 6 different middle school boys begin as drummers in the worship team. And I refer to this in the blog post as well. One of my greatest joys was about 3 months ago when we were singing the Revelation song, that wonderfully slow, reflective, adoring song based on the book of Revelation. And one of our 15-year-old drummers was on that morning. And the way that he just caressed the cymbal and lightly touched various other pieces of the kit. I remember when the song was over, I looked over at him and I said, wow, beautiful job. And he just glowed from ear to ear. And just to see these young men blossom as very sensitive and wise worship leading drummers has been a real blessing to me as being part of that team.
Well, and that comes from working with people who are experienced. They come with a certain, like we all do, a certain type of music that they really enjoy. And for some of them, that's hip hop, and some of them it's rap, and some of them it's rock and roll. And some of it is some of them it's worship music. And they kind of bring all their skills from those areas into the team, and then they learn. And yeah, they see what other drummers do and are capable of, and they imitate it. And then, man, it's beautiful stuff.
Yeah. So Marja, as Diane mentioned in her introduction, you are the worship leader at Meadowlands here, but you're also one of the youth leaders. Mm-hmm. And I remember 3 or 4 years ago, you and I were at a youth leaders meeting, and we were reflecting on, so why do we do what we do in youth ministry? And I'll never forget it. At one point you said, we want our children and teens in this congregation to know that adults are trustworthy and that it's worthwhile for them to get to know each other and to walk together in faith. And that just jumped off the page, or not the page, but it kind of jumped right at me when you said those words. And I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit. Why is building trust between children's, teens, and adults such a high value for you?
I think that trustworthiness is one of the hardest things you can practice as a human being, actually. And I think that so many people come with brokenness and stories of brokenness because of not being able to trust people they went to church with. I feel like in order to create a culture of trust, to create a sense of leadership where people can follow you because they have followed you so successfully in the past, I think that's integral to good leadership. It's integral to good leadership at every level, but I'm just going to keep it in the worship team today and say that one of the reasons I schedule rotating in a various music schedule instead of having band A and band B or adult band, youth band, is so that that trust can be grown and established. And I think there are key ways to get to that. And it's a journey. It doesn't start with, well, I'm just going to change how I schedule things and shazam, we have a working group. I think it's really important to kind of deliberately follow steps for trust building. And I think the first thing you have to be is trustworthy. You do what you say you're going to do, and you don't do what you say you're not going to do. And if you do make a mistake, you own it. And you're humble about it. And you say, I'm really, really sorry that I messed up. Let's move forward. And that goes, if we're going to stick with youth, that goes so far with youth. They want you to be authentic in all things. And if you are expressing your joys, your frustrations, your apologies, and your leadership in a way that builds trust with them, man, they will follow you anywhere. I think there are really great ways that you can build trust. I think you can start by trying to be more social. You tend to get caught up in the schedules of practice the music, practice before church, do the church service, set up the new schedule, practice. and forget that it's really nice to maybe start with a couple of cookies and coffee and spend half an hour just chatting, or to throw a barbecue twice a year and get together, or to take your whole team bowling. It's worth it to put budget and time and energy into social interaction to build relationship and build that trust. And then I think it's really important that you're a good listener, that I'm the worship director, but I'm not always the worship leader. And sometimes I'm even on for a Sunday where I'm up front at the front, but I'm not the leader. And I think it's really important that I'm listening to whoever has been scheduled to lead that particular worship practice and worship service, and to allow things that I wouldn't normally do, right? For me, I have the way I like to do things. I have the way I like it to come off. I know if I go in this direction, I can push just so far, but sometimes you got to let someone else push in a different direction or push too far, and see how that goes, and allow other people to practice their leading by listening to them. Listen to their opinions, listen to what they want to do musically that might be different than what you want to do, and then lead. Then say, that's great input, let's try it, or that's great input but not this time, or so listen really well and then lead.
Yeah, what you've just described brings to my mind a word that to me embodies our rehearsals and our leading, is the word respect. I feel like when there's 8 of us there, half of us teenagers, that there's a culture of complete reciprocal mutual respect going on. And what you just described is you welcome input from others as we're rehearsing, but you make the final call and you tell us what we're going to do. And I think everybody gets it. And a little story that to me kind of illustrates the vibe of the group as well. I remember once, I think about half a year ago, there was one song that we knew really, really well, and rehearsal was running late. So we said, okay, we don't need to go over this one. And then it came Sunday morning, and Chris, the guitarist, and I were supposed to introduce the song. And we each started in a different key,
Yep.
which doesn't work that well. So we immediately stopped. We looked at each other. We laughed. Everyone in the team smiled. The congregation smiled. And we just told each other what key we were going to be in, and we continued. And what I loved about that is Chris and I have been playing music for decades between the two of us. And the teams that morning looked at these 2 old guys and suddenly they realized, hey, we're all in this together. And this is not about the adults showing them how to do it and the teens, working through their mess ups, but we all have our little times when we slip up. And that just actually, that mistake, I think, actually enhanced the trust and the respect among the entire team. And that was really kind of a cool moment of grace that morning.
And I also think it gives you an opportunity to review with honesty, right? To come back to that group and say, oh, thank you so much for your contributions to worship this morning, and big whoopsie, good thing, we're living under a spirit of grace, and leave it at that. I think it's really important to, everyone knows there's a mistake, so it doesn't make any sense to hash it over. And everyone behaving graciously is going to achieve a whole lot more than trying to say, well, you were the one who was supposed to determine the key, or, we decided on D, obviously, last on Wednesday, so I don't know what your problem is. Like, not helpful. And it doesn't help to, it helps to kind of laugh at yourself, laugh it off.
Right.
And that also helps us to trust each other, to know that I'm not going to get in trouble if I mess this up.
Yeah. One of the misconceptions about mentoring teens into worshiping is that this is entirely about musicians. And what I really loved from in the last 20, 30 years in the culture created by Reformed worship and other dimensions of our worship world are things like the visual arts and other dimensions of worship. And there was one project at our church, the Old Testament Visual Arts Project, that really embodies a lot of this mentoring youth into worship as well. And it'd be great if you could share that story with us.
Sure. So we call it the OTC, or the Old Testament Challenge. And we call it the Old Testament Challenge because it was a huge challenge. We started way back in 2013. Everett kind of said to, Everett is our pastor Everett of our church. He said to me, so there was this one time that I led a 34-week series on the Old Testament, and it's actually a curriculum that I followed called the Old Testament Challenge. And I said, wow, that sounds really exciting. What is your plan? So we started, actually, I think this was September of 2012, and we thought about it for about 6 months. And in May of 2013, we said, okay, I think this is something we should look at for the 2015-16 church year. So we kind of put it in our minds that that was going to be the plan. And we went first to our visual arts team and said, hey, it's May 2013, and we're talking about September 2015, but this is on tap. It's coming. So if you can think of anything visual that you think will help us, let us know. So it kind of simmered and simmered and simmered. And then in about May of 2014, Everett and I looked at each other and said, okay, so this is really happening. So what are we going to do? And we devised that for each week of the 34-week series, we would solicit and commission, not commission, we didn't pay anybody, but commission an artwork from each member, from a member of our congregation for each week of the 34 weeks, plus one additional artwork for Easter. So 35 pieces of art to be made by people in our congregation, one for each week of the Old Testament Challenge. So we went back to the Visual Arts Committee and said, this is our plan. And they said, what? What's about the budget? What about the this? What about the that? How are we going to do that? We said, we don't know. Figure it out. And so it kind of went from there in a beautiful way. They totally figured it out. We didn't really just leave them hanging. We gave them much more direction. We gave them a week-by-week thematic outlay with the scripture verses that would be preached on every single week, so they knew exactly what was coming. We said to them, any medium, anything is welcome, however you want to phrase this. And so they did that. So they created a form that people could sign up, and you could sign up for a theme or a week, or however you wanted to make it work so it fit your schedule. And this went out in the end of June 2015.
Yeah.
So it took them about a year to refine that concept. So now we're 2 years into the project, and we're in the earliest stages, and we give the first notice to the congregation, which was, so 18 weeks or so from now, we're going to start this, just so you know what's coming, and you have the opportunity to sign up to offer your art in this, or whatever medium you want, as long as it fits on a size this size, or a size this size, or a size this size. So 3 separate sizes like that. And the first 18 weeks were on offer. The first 18 weeks of 34, and not including Easter, were on offer. And the whole visual arts team was like, oh, okay, here we go. You know, people have the opportunity to sign up for these 18 weeks. And we are, all of us, each one of us, ready to take 3 weeks if we have to, right? It's the team of 10 people. You know, if we have to cover the whole series, we totally can. We just need to know. 10 minutes after the worship service was over, more than half of the slots were taken. And by 17 minutes after, every single slot was taken, and almost half of them by people under the age of 30. And, you know, 6 of them by people under the age of 20. Amazing. Just beyond our wildest dreams. And so it went. The whole year went that way. And in the end, we had 35 beautiful pieces of art from people ranging in age from 11 all the way up to 80s. Amazing.
And I remember what really moved me was that it didn't matter if it was an 11-year-old or if it was a professional artist at the prime of her career. Every week, the artwork was treated in the same way. It was on the bulletin cover. It was on an easel at the front. It was incorporated into the message in some way. And it was just a wonderful affirmation of the church of all generations sharing their gifts in this visually worshipful way. I remember my wife was wanting to sign up to be one of the ones, she's a quilter, and she didn't get there in time. she
Yeah.
she never had a chance to sign up, and she just kind of smiled that there was such enthusiasm and excitement about all generations signing up for this project together. So, getting back to the teenagers on the music team.
Sure.
Teens, have a lot of commitments in their lives. They have different kinds of ups and downs, and how do you recruit them? And then, let's say a young man after 6-8 months says, "Oh, I'm kind of tired of this," and how do you deal with recruitment and persevering, keeping people growing on the team, the kinds
Sure.
of challenges that come with that dimension of mentoring teenagers?
So one of the things I do is I keep track of kids who are interested in instruments and who are taking music lessons, and that I see and participating in various ways in other areas of their life. I keep track of that because a couple of music teachers are in our school, and I kind of talk to parents. I also have the advantage of being a youth leader, and so I talk to my youth. They're in my grade 6, 7, and 8 group. And so I really do encourage that. Talk to youth leaders. Youth leaders know the kids really well. They know what their interests are, or they should. And so hopefully they will be able to pass along kids who have some skills in that area. I recruit them usually with talk one-on-one, and how's it going? How's you liking drums these days? Yeah, that sounds pretty neat. So you're in the praise band at your high school, that's awesome. Or so you're in the rock band in your garage, sounds amazing. And then I kind of let that stop. I leave it there for a while. Yeah. This year I recruited a young fella named Justin by sending him an email saying, I've noticed that you're really growing in your gifts in this area. Do you have any interest in joining us for a few practices and getting a feel for how the band runs and getting a feel for if you'd be interested in leading worship? And he was like, I'd love to. Thank you so much for contacting me. I'll be there on Wednesday. So he was right for the picking, and we picked him. So that's great. His buddy, whose name is Ethan, is also a drummer. And he tried to quit on me this summer. I'm just busy. I don't know if I'm not really enjoying it. Please don't put me on the schedule for next time. And I'm kind of sneaky. And so I said, oh, sorry, the schedule's already mostly written. And also, just give it a few more months and see how you're feeling, because you're such a blessing to our group, and you're really gifted, and I really appreciate your contributions, and I'd love for you to just try us a little longer before you make that decision. Anyway, then later I had a chance after kind of our next practice to chat with him one-on-one and say, so E, were you serious? Did you really want, to quit? And he said, no, I don't like the practice. I said, of course, all of us hate the practice. But, so in the end, I chatted with his mom later, who said, really, his problem is he can't get out of bed on Sunday morning and he hates coming early to practice. And I said, yeah, that totally flies. I feel that. Let's see if he wants to give us another few months. And I feel like being a little pushy that way is sometimes what youth need. They need to know that they're valued, that their contribution isn't just, oh, we're helping you out by helping you grow. No, they are contributing. Their contributions are valuable. They're meaningful. The relationship we're building is meaningful. And even though they're busy, it's going to be worth it to stick it out. Usually on the third time that they say, no, really, I want to quit, then I let them quit.
And by the way, Ethan was the young man who did such an amazing job on the Revelation song earlier this year.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he's staying on. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not just working with the worship team, you're working with an entire congregation.
Mm-hmm.
And the mentoring culture that you've grown is not just with the small group, but it involves everyone who comes for worship on Sunday morning. What have you learned, and what do you practice when it comes to leading an entire congregation to be part of supporting a mentoring culture for teens?
One of the things that I've noticed about almost everyone is that they love their kids. They love them. They love them with their whole heart. And the most curmudgeon loves to see small children at the front of church, whether it's singing a little song or their mother has to carry them out because they're screaming, whatever it is, there's something about it that feels so much like the future and the investing and the kingdom to pretty much everyone. And I think you get your congregation on board by kind of introducing on a kind of slow scale. But I think the most valuable contribution you can make as a worship director, and I realize I'm in a privileged position of being paid for my work, but even in the volunteer capacity, is to talk it up, to talk about the value, the investment, the resource, just talk up, look at these beautiful children, kingdom children, the image bearers of Christ, and look at their contributions to our worship team. It sounds a little emotionally manipulative, but it kind of is that way. That is how it goes. You are passionate about it, so pour your passion out verbally, and don't just do it in meeting settings, do it all the time. Banish bad mouthing from your leadership speak. Banish bad mouthing anyone. You don't badmouth the board of directors, and you don't badmouth the youth on your team. All the things you say are, we're so grateful for the opportunity to be investing in our kids. This is the direction we have planned. These are the results that are measurable and discernible, and here they are right in front of you. These are kids that are invested and committed into church and church work. What is better than that? Look at how amazing this is. Let's rejoice together and praise God together. Let's pray. Like really push verbally, vocally to your congregation how amazing this is. And also continue to build a trust relationship, not just in your small group, but on a huge scale, where you take yourself seriously and the music and the things you're doing, but not too seriously, where you make things excellent, but not perfect, because there's excellence in small hands on a keyboard giving a gift of praise and worship to God. That is excellent. Whether or not it's perfect doesn't matter.
Amen. And one thing that I've noticed in our time in this congregation is that what you have grown, it has become part of the church culture. And cultures take years to develop. So it must have taken a lot of perseverance on your part. But at a certain point, when the culture shifts in that direction, there's a self-perpetuating dimension about it, right? That somehow the spirit inhabits that culture and kind of builds a kind of momentum that allows it to continue and to keep on growing. And I've really been grateful for the way you've persevered for more than a decade through building this sort of a thing. Thank you. What are some examples of some of the things that happen at rehearsal that kind of help sustain the culture that you developed there?
Yeah, well, we try as much as possible to build rapport with each other, to allow things to get off track. Very often my musicians will be playing a song that has some sort of awesome rhythm in it, and then all of a sudden they're playing the Moody Blues, and so we start singing, Down to the River or whatever, and to allow those things to happen musically, I think is helpful. I think it's also helpful to have to be relaxed enough. I have all my youth members call me Marja. I think it's important that they don't Mrs. Fledderus me, because I think it's important that they know that here's equal footing here in this setting. That doesn't always work for everybody, but that's something for me. And I am not a trained musician. I am a singer. I can read music. I have like grade 4 piano, and that's it. So I don't have a lot of good language for what I'm trying to get at. So I find that a lot of the time, if I'm talking to a drummer, I'll be saying like, so what I want from you is a little, or I want a little boom, 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 boom. This is what I want from you. I have no words. You're the expert. Go with it. Yeah. And they laugh at me. and they point their fingers and they say, hey, how about we do a little boom, 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 and things like that. And we allow those things to grow and be funny. Yeah.
Yeah, no, in my experience, I don't think it's so much Moody Blues that we lapse into, but Beatles. But anyway,
Beatles, yeah.
It's all good. It's all
yeah.
good. Another thing that I've noticed is because every year more teenagers enter the team for the first time, as I sit and look around the sanctuary as a worshiper, and I see children everywhere, I can almost read their minds as if they're looking up at the worship team and thinking to themselves, 3 more years and I bet you Marja's going to ask me. Wow, I can't wait till I get my turn. And it just kind of, when you breathe in, you feel like that's the culture that's present in the sanctuary. And that's really a gift and a blessing of the culture that's grown over the time that you've led. Another blessing that I experienced was once this summer, I think the entire team was teenagers, except I was on the piano that week. And so the 2 young women, the 2 18-year-olds who were leading the singing, all of a sudden discovered that they were in charge of the entire liturgy at rehearsal on Wednesday night. And they didn't bat an eye. They just acted as if it was the most normal thing in the world that they would lead the entire liturgy on Sunday morning. We went through it on Wednesday evening, and they led with poise and dignity and reverence and in beautiful ways that Sunday morning. And one of them is actually quite a shy young woman, but she too did not bat an eye, but just stepped up and did what she was asked to do as if it was the most normal thing in the world. And to me, that was one of those Sundays too, where I drove home and thought, wow, thank you, Lord, for that kind of a culture where teenagers can step up and participate in leading and worshiping with us. I'm sure you've experienced that quite a few times as well.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. So one of the things I really love with relation to that, growing in relationship with them, that they learn that our expectations are that they just give what they have to give, and that is enough of a gift. We build relationship that kind of goes off into the future, and a lot of our kids, they go to university or college, or they move away for whatever thing. And what I love and find so moving is when they connect with me again, when they say, hey, guess what? I have a gig leading worship in the new church that I'm in, and I'm so excited. And, or guess what? I got married, or guess what? I graduated and I'm moving to Australia, said one of them. And it's just so cool that they would connect with me. Like, what a gift.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we need to wrap up. So maybe we'll just summarize the main points of what we said this last half hour and then go to the Q&A. So first point, the why. We're worshiping with all ages, and all ages have gifts to bring to the table. And it may seem like a lot of work, but once establishes a mentoring culture, in some ways it's like, as you said, even a little bit easier to work with a worship team of teenagers and adults.
Mm-hmm. So also working with youth, it takes a bit of effort to get started, and to work intergenerationally takes a bit of effort, but once the pattern is established, it kind of perpetuates itself and keeps growing. Mm-hmm.
And that reminds us that this is a long-term persevering project.
Yeah.
I've heard of too many people who tried this for 3 or 4 months, didn't go as quickly and as well as they had hoped, and they said, well, let's forget that. We obviously weren't called to do that. Not so. Persevere.
Mm-hmm. And you need to be intentional and plan ahead. So we didn't really touch on that as much as we could have, but I think that it's really important to don't wing it. Don't wing it. Plan it. Give yourself time. If you need to push it away 6 months and give yourself more time, take the time you need to set it up so it goes as amazing well as it possibly can. Yeah.
And maybe re-examine what you think of as worship excellence. There's a kind of excellence in which we take ourselves too seriously, and that can easily undermine mentoring teens. There's another kind of excellence in which we celebrate that we are a community of all ages, And frankly, in my experience, one does not lead. The kind of excellence that in which we take ourselves too seriously often ends up undermining a richer kind of worship excellence.
So if I had to say in 3 things what should happen to get started, it's cast a vision, talk it up, and review it honestly. And those 3 things will not steer you wrong.
Amen. Amen. Diane, are there any questions for us to ponder?
Well, yes, actually, there are some questions for you to ponder. So take a breath, and we will start with the first one here. It came in a while ago from Brett, and his question is for both of you: when you schedule, do you find that certain youth and certain adults sort of just click together in a mentorship way? And so do you schedule them together more often intentionally?
So yes, I do find that some people click better, and that some mentorship happens that strengthens skill building. But I also try to shake it up so that people get the opportunity to sharpen their skills with other people. So we have a few really strong guitar players, and a few teenage guitar players, and one adult guitar player who is not as strong as the rest. And I also pair my youth with him because they learn from each other in amazing ways. And I think it's really important that we all learn to listen to and respect multiple different people as our skills get sharpened.
Yeah, and I should add for Brett's benefit that one of our inspirations has been the way one of the older players for the Chicago Cubs has mentored the younger players on that team too, just as an aside.
You had to get the Chicago Cubs in there. I can tell. No, that was a great question, Brett. Thank you. We have a few more too. And as you who are listening think of more questions or have more responses here, please type them into the chat box as well. We'll try to get to everybody's questions. Here's another good question from Marcus. How do you incorporate a middle schooler or a high schooler who is just learning an instrument? Do you have them just participate in practice until they're proficient enough, or do you have them play during worship right away? Great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. We are a little bit more deliberate in our introduction of someone new to the praise team. So it's not just a matter of, hey, show up on Wednesday and we'll see you up there on Sunday. Usually we do take some time to build skills or get to hear each other in a way that is beneficial, so that going forward, we're not in a state of tension or panic on a Sunday morning. I think that's really important as a leader to be reading the group so you know where the comfort levels and comfort zones are. For someone just learning an instrument, practicing with the band is where we usually start off there. And then we often do, like, I will deliberately choose a song that I think that person is going to master in a length of time, and let that person master that particular song, and then put that song in a worship service so that they can participate in their first worship service with something they have an amount of mastery, and then their comfort level is really high. And so participating in a service would come like as a 1 song, maybe 2 songs, and the music would get to that person beforehand, instead of, you know, a lot of musicians that I just throw stuff at on the day of. Yeah.
I've also noticed, Marja, that during Advent, you will find places where very young musicians will have just a few moments to share something, make a musical contribution to the service, just so that they're accustomed to having a leadership role already at the age of 8, maybe even just for 1 minute. Mm-hmm. And so there's this sequence of gradually being engrafted into the team.
Mm-hmm.
Great, yeah, thank you so much. Your suggestions are so practical that I think this is just really, really helpful. Marcus has a question. How long are rehearsals? I love the emphasis on allowing creativity, but we struggle sometimes with getting things done in a timely manner.
Oh, totally. Yeah, so again, that takes a bit of a leadership piece there of measuring your time span and things. I try not to let people go too long down the rabbit trail, especially if, you know, it's Communion Sunday and we still have 6 songs to practice and we're getting into the time. Usually our rehearsals start at, I realize this is a ridiculously early time, but we usually start at 6:30 on a Wednesday night, and we try and run our rehearsals at the same time as the GEMS program is running, so that people can come to church only one time in the week if they have kids of that age, instead of having to come multiple times. And so the GEMS program runs for 2 hours. Our practice almost never does. Usually our practice runs for an hour and 10 minutes, maybe an hour and 15, maybe 45. It kind of depends, but we have those 2 hours if we need them. And usually we use them up if it's something like we're doing Good Friday and Easter, or we're doing, you know, Thanksgiving 1 or 2, like that.
Right.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Ashley has a question. You mentioned having worship teams being different each week. Not a set team, A, B, and C. You said that early on, Marja. Do you find that it is hard for the team members to mesh together then, if they have to get used to each other each week? She just gives an example here. I'll say this a minute before you answer. She says, we usually have a set group of teams for 1 to 2 years because we thought that it would help the teams work better together.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are certainly advantages to having a team that works well together. The problem is that when something goes wrong, it goes quite wrong because they're not used to listening to someone else. They're used to listening only to each other. And so that can be a strength or a weakness. I have about 20 people that are on my regular list, and another 10 people that are on my once in a while list, and another 10 people that are probably on my, if I was desperate, I could call them list. But my regular schedule, I always have a different band every single week with different worship leaders, different piano player, different guitar player. I shake it up every week because it really sharpens skills. Musicians, we have a key guitar player who is like a superstar, and throwing him in with lots of different people, it sharpens their skills. And we have piano players that are like, one amazing piano player who can sight read anything at all, super classical piano player, but cannot for the life of him do any sort of fill in. So he learns really, really well from the other band members. And then one who can fill anything, who can remember any piece of music in her mind. It's like a spiritual gift with her. You say, yeah, the song that goes, dun, 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 remember from the 70s? And she's like, oh yeah, blah, 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 right? It's just amazing. But sight reading is not her thing. Put a hymn in front of her and it's like, ugh. So then having other musicians there that she can sharpen with, it's just works really well. And so I find that shaking it up every single week has led to an enriching of the types and styles of music that you can try out. Good listening to one another and being willing to take direction from other people. A lack of like, band A is on, so we're not going to church because we don't go when band A is on. We don't have that. Or the youth band is playing, we're not coming. You know, there's some things like that exist in church culture that can be avoided by shaking it up.
Just 2 quick thoughts to add to that. So I'm a once a month piano player, and every time I'm on, it's a different group. But I find that the rehearsal vibe and the leading vibe is the same every time, no matter who's on. And so I think, Marja, you've developed a kind of a culture of expectation that persists from week to week, no matter who's on. Secondly, you and I were at a meeting last week, Marja, reflecting around our pastor's fireplace about worship. And at that meeting, I heard you say, every week when you prepare the liturgy, you see who's on that week, and you keep that in mind a little bit as you pick the songs for that week. And I think that kind of helps the rehearsals with different teams flow every week as well.
Well, and you were on for Thanksgiving weekend together with Chris, who's my superstar guitar player. And so I knew that we could do a gospel song and it would completely fly in a way that it may not have done with other ones. So yeah, that was fun.
Yep.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that explanation. That was very good. Brett has a comment and a question. First of all, he says, thanks, Sid. I'm not sure if Brett knows you, Sid, but thanks to both of you, especially from them, from all of our attendees too. And here's the question, is practice mandatory? What if a student or adult wants to play on Sunday but can't make practice on Wednesday?
So yes, practice is mandatory. That's the short answer. But life is complicated, so you know how that goes. In some ways, it depends on the musician. We are really much more effective when we've practiced on Wednesday altogether. So if my piano player can't make it, then I ask them to please find a replacement for themselves, because we still have a basic leading from the piano. And mainly we insist on practice being mandatory. I think it really has deeply deepened our musicianship to practice. And then there's none of that panicky last minute thing going on Sunday morning, or you throw in the missing element X on Sunday morning, and that throws off the whole feel. We try and avoid that wherever possible.
And just a quick note from my perspective as a musician. So every 3 months, Marja prepares a schedule, and then she emails all of us and says, check the next 3 months, which Sundays and prior Wednesdays you are not available. Let me know, and then I will make the schedule accordingly. So when we're put on the schedule, she already knows that we are counting on being there that Wednesday and the coming Sunday.
Yes, good point. Yeah, thanks for adding that, Sid. It's probably helpful. And that's part of your good leadership, Marja, that you send that out ahead of time and get people's input. I'm sure that helps the scheduling go a little bit smoother anyway, because people's schedules change, right? So we know how that real life turns out too, of course.
Well, and grace and flexibility, those are also marks of good leadership or whatever. And I figure life happens, this past week or a couple of weeks ago, one of my main worship leader, the leader for that week, said, I can't do it. I can't be there Wednesday. So I went and filled in for him, which is not my usual practice, but that's just how it was this week. And he still led the Sunday, and that all went well.
Absolutely. And you're right. Grace and flexibility. Great keys in leading and worship ministries. Irene has a question for us, and we have a few more here, so we'll just keep moving right along. Irene is asking or saying, you say that we should accept that teenagers give what they have to give. Does that mean that you would not rehearse with them, not just playing an instrument, but reading liturgy as well? We find they do not express enthusiasm in reading. Do you work with them? We find adults are much more dependable to show up for practice. What about having a non-Christian as part of the praise team? So there are several questions there. We're talking about teenagers first, rehearsing with them for even reading liturgies or Bible probably passages, and about working with them. And then that follow-up question about including somebody who's not a committed believer, on your team.
I can begin by going back to that service during the summer when it was only teenagers and I who were part of the team. And at the rehearsal, we included all the readings for that Sunday. So they did rehearse them. And Marja is not only a mentor, she's also a role model. And so these teenagers have seen her and heard her lead liturgies for most of their lives. And they aspire to embody the qualities that she embodies. And yes, we're very free to say, look, you need to slow that down a little bit. You need to enunciate that more clearly. So speaking parts, especially with teenagers, require rehearsal in the same way that musical demands require rehearsal. That's the first part of the question, I would say.
Well, and I also think adults benefit from rehearsing speaking parts too. It's just always a good idea to pre-read what you have to read in public. It's just, yeah. But we do have a number of teen participants that they will not read.
Right.
And that's fine with me. They don't have to. when I say they should give what they have to give, it is essential that they rehearse with us. Being a member of the band is a commitment that requires rehearsal, that requires your time and energy and effort. And if you're being dragged there against your will, it's not really going to be beneficial for you or for them. Rehearsing with teens is not always ideal. There are a lot of times where I get the text 5 minutes before, oh gee, I'm really sorry, I forgot. But I also really try to publish the service two days in advance as kind of a, oh yeah, remember you're on. And the, oh yeah, remember you're on email is just, hey everybody, we'll see you Wednesday night to practice, blah. And then they get their service in their inbox, and then the ball is really in their court. So if I get a text 10 minutes beforehand, I respond in an almost parental way to say, oh, gee, I'm really disappointed you're not going to be here tonight. Did you get the service I sent on Tuesday or Monday? Right. Okay. Well, I'll see you Sunday morning. Or, you know what, can you find a replacement for Sunday morning? Or something like that. It depends on the kid and what situation we've been working with the last few months, if you follow what I mean. As for non-believers,
I would say this, perhaps some of the teenagers are searching, that they're not entirely clear what their faith commitments are. And then I love this little model from the Celtic tradition that says, often the life of faith goes in the sequence of belonging, believing, behaving.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes we turn it around and say, no, the sequence is behaving, believing, belonging. You don't belong until you go through steps 1 and 2. And to me then, the worship team functions in a quasi-evangelistic kind of way to say, hey, you belong here. And maybe you haven't clarified your own faith commitments yet, but maybe by serving together with this other group of folks in the communion of the saints, it'll help you understand that your belonging here will encourage you on the road towards clarifying your believing.
Yeah, really good. Okay. Eileen is saying hello from New Jersey. And her question is, what kind of spiritual discipline do you have with both young and old worship leaders? And when do you find time to do it together?
Sure. So we have a music meeting every, I don't know, 3 times a year, something like that, 3 or 4 times a year. And our music meeting is usually a time where we sit. First, we spend some time in devotion with each other. We talk about, what's been going on this year in our church year, what's been going on this year in our church, which is not the same, and what's been going on this year in our lives. We pray for each other. I take prayer requests at the beginning of every practice and at the beginning of every Sunday morning. We talk about what's going on in our lives. And if that means practice started 10 minutes later, I leave that to the Spirit, because starting in prayer together and listening to each other's requests and hearing the pains and burdens and joys that are on our hearts is part of good worship leading, because we're bringing all the same sort of broken and hurting people into worship. So being able to love each other through those things, I think is one of the biggest parts of spiritual discipline that we practice, is prayer for each other and love for each other. We also have a time for review. So at our worship meeting, we review how the last, 3 or 4 months of worship has been going, what's been going badly, what's been going great, where there is room for improvement. And those things are really important because they establish good practice, and we really want to do that. We want to be accountable. We don't just, we're good musicians, but we don't just get carte blanche to do whatever we want. We need to be accountable to the mandates of our council and of our board, and we examine that and think about that.
In addition to those formal disciplines, there's this informal discipline which is practiced widely, of what I would call gratitude and encouragement. That all the time, and I hear Marja models leadership of expressing gratitude for everyone's contributions to the team and encouragements for what people have been able to contribute on a Sunday morning or during a rehearsal. And that combination of formal and informal disciplines, I believe, weaves together a strong practice.
Yeah, sounds good. I have a question about those, when you said that you get the music team together 3 times a year, and then you pray and do things together. Is that the entire, all of your musicians and leaders? Okay.
Yeah, so
Say more about that.
Yeah, so I call what I call a music meeting, and I say if everyone could come, and I invite the whole sound and production crew, my band, and any visual arts people that want to come as well. And so the whole band is everyone that is on the schedule that is our regular musician, and plus anyone who is on the backup schedule or whatever. So we sit down together to talk about all these things, and we meet to review and to make plans for, and so that everybody's kind of on the same page. I meet with the pastor to plan a church year. Once a year, we kind of take a look at the church overview, and then I try and share it with the band and the team, because their prayerfulness in that and their awareness of it makes them more aware of why certain songs are being chosen, why the flavor of a service is what it is, and it gets them on board spiritually in worship leading, and I think there's value in that. And I tend to introduce new music in kind of a chunk at that time. So I say, here are a bunch of new songs I'm looking at. Let's listen to them together and give me a love, hate, like kind of rating. Love it, hate it, like it, we'll tolerate it, that sort of thing. And that's how new music kind of gets introduced and established. I figure I've got about 40 people sitting there some of the time. Sometimes it's 15, sometimes it's 25, depends on the time of year. And if I can get a fairly decent agreement on music, then it seems good to me, good enough to introduce.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, and I appreciate you including you. It sounds like you include your tech guys in that, your sound guys. Yeah. Awesome. I'm sure they appreciate that too. That's important. Okay, we have only a few minutes left. Our hour has just flown by. We have one more question. And if anybody else has a real pressing question that's listening, please type it in quickly and we'll try to get to it. But let's do this one from Ashley. She says, we have a worship director, but then have 5 to 7 people who take turns planning each service. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering who chooses who is playing and singing in your worship teams each week, and how to avoid overusing some and not forgetting about others.
Right. So my role as worship director includes scheduling all the musicians for things. And is Ashley asking about song choice? What songs get used, or which musicians?
I think more about musicians, but I'm not sure. You could address both, or Ashley. Oh, Ashley says musicians. Yes.
Yeah, so I keep kind of a master list of everyone whose involvement is signed up for involvement, not just for music, but for visual arts and for sound and projection. And I'm the one who makes all the schedules. So then it makes it easier for me to keep track of who's on, who's not on, and who is leading. So I don't know. If you're the worship director, you might want to push to be the scheduler, the kind of permanent scheduler, so you have some control over that, or meet with the group of people who does the planning and kind of ask for more, general usage of everyone that's involved on the team, so that everyone's kind of getting an opportunity to participate, but also so that the musicianship grows and the congregation grows in listening to and learning from different leaders.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you. I think we'll end with this comment from Irene, and then I'll wrap it up. Irene says, I feel that authenticity is necessary before trustworthiness can happen. We find that teenagers today are looking for us to live what we preach and believe. Yeah. Amen to that. And I know you both said that as well. You have been so inspiring both of you. Thank you so much for this time, and just so practical. We can tell that you do this week in and week out, and you live and breathe what you're saying. So thank you very much for being authentic with us and in this training. Let me just say to our listeners that we have recorded this. I'm going to share a screen now with you so that you can see a couple of things here, hopefully. We have, if you want to contact us, you can get us on the Worship Ministries website, or you can email us at worship@crcna.org. And if you have any feedback for Marja or Sid too, you can send it to us and we'll pass it on. We have a few recommended resources. Sid works with the Faith Formation team. He's the team leader here for the CRC, and they have such great materials online, including what they call an intergenerational church toolkit and some 10 ways tools. And I will include those on the post when we record, when we post the recording too, and we'll send that to you. So you'll have links to both of those resources. And we also have a blog that Sid wrote recently for the Reformed Worship website, and it's called No Regrets. And it sounds like it's a misspelling, but it's not. You have to read it, and you'll understand exactly what he means there, and how I got the idea for this webinar actually from that blog. So thank you all for attending. We really appreciate all of your feedback and excellent questions and participation. And we will have several new webinars scheduled for next month. Check the website, and we'll be emailing you probably with those too, and please sign up for those. Thanks again, Sid and Marja. It was a pleasure to spend this hour with you. And blessings to all of you as you plan worship and as you worship in this coming week. Goodbye and have a great week.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Diane.
Yep, thank you.